express an interest in drinks where you couldn't get the ingredients. But there were cases where the ingredients were obscure.
Mm-hmm.
So
especially when you put the book out.
Yeah, although at that time I made sure you could get every single ingredient in that book. But within months, I forget what the first ingredient was that you couldn't get anymore.
But essentially it just dropped off.
Yeah, exactly. And then people would find another place to get it. But that's the situation with a published book. You can't change it once it's there. And I did go through 3 editions, so within those 3 editions, I did change my route for people to get things each time to make sure that there was everything available that could be available for them.
That's awesome. Dr. Cocktail, is it okay if I call you that?
Yes, of course. You call me what you want.
Welcome to Serves You Right. We'll get into some of what you do, but I thought it'd be fun for the listener who's at home, who's not as much as a nerd as I am, but loves cocktails, works in the industry. Can you give us a brief sketch of how you got maybe the moniker Dr. Cocktail? That's probably a good start.
Right. Okay. Right. Because I had been sort of interested in cocktails since I was too young to have ever consumed one. I was always a book nerd, and up on the very top shelf of my dad's library, which I had to climb on things to get to, was one book called The Official Mixer's Manual by Patrick Gavin Duffy, and it was issued right after Prohibition, and I was just agog at the names of the ingredients and the names of the recipes themselves, never having had any of them. And it occurred to me then that, like a light bulb above my head, that this is what they were drinking in all the old black and white movies I like to watch. Wow, this is what they were drinking. So I was interested, and it went through life like that, and I developed as much as what was then the small town of Charlottesville, Virginia, could possibly entertain. But finally, when the internet first happened, for me, which was like 1995, I guess, I was looking for anything involving cocktail, and there wasn't much. You could type in cocktail, and you go to a site, and it's full of ASCII text and coding, and that was about it. But then I found AOL, which then was a large island in the sea of indecipherable internet, and they had a sort of a food and drink network on there. And I started joining in, shy, didn't want to get slapped down, but, I saw a lot of people were asking questions, and I thought I could probably answer some of these, so timidly I'd start answering them, and it sort of revved up pace. It was very good and nice, and so I continued doing that, and I met all kinds of interesting people there. Bill Grimes, who was the restaurant reviewer for the New York Times, and Gary Regan, and several others who were just smart as could be, and published in cocktail realms. So finally, I think it was Gary who said to me, Doc, you probably, he didn't call me Doc then, you probably need a better name. I said, for my screen name. So I thought, you're probably right. So this being so early on, I said, how about Dr. Cocktail? And he said, that sounds great. So I got it because it was early on. Although why they didn't want me when I was still aging wino, I'm just not sure. But I immediately got an invitation to be the spirits host for the Food and Drink Network on America Online. And that's how Dr. Cocktail happened. It was actually... Yes, I should mention that Aging Wino was not a name I gave myself. My girlfriend at the time, we decided we would give each other names, our first internet email names. So she chose Aging Wino for me, and I chose Elitist Shrew at AOL.com for her.
Oh my gosh. Yes, really. It was the beginning of the internet. All the names were available.
That's right.
Oh man. That's awesome. Yeah. It harkens back to a time when things were simpler before we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden and life was pure. That's so Gary Regan too. I've only met him once back in the day. We're filming this around Tales of the Cocktail, and it was at Tales, and got to see him mix a drink and dip his finger in and
That's
taste
right.
it. And
that
like
is his way. I mean, he would tell that story about the swizzlings with the finger. He loved honesty, and I knew Gary well. I would visit him in his house at Cornwall on the Hudson. And I'd stay there with them for weekends, and then we'd try various things. He was a great guy and had an adventurous life up until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry he's gone.
Yeah. Same. I think a lot of people are kind of thinking through the evolution of starting to talk online, you getting some preeminence. Do you think that where we're at with cocktails, where we're at with kind of the revival and how things have gone, do you think any of this would have happened without the internet? Like, it would have been too many isolated people, I think, to really build on itself.
I think eventually it would. I think we've got a zeitgeist situation here. I think the internet accelerated everything. But before the internet, there were all kinds of revivals of past trends through history. And I think, maybe newspapers would have taken a more preeminent role if there had been no computer network such as it was. But then again, the whole idea of the computer network, of the Industrial Revolution itself, that was zeitgeist too, because everything started developing at exactly the same time, be it phonograph, who invented it, who first harnessed electricity. Edison is challenged all the time for other people who have said, I did it first, or their descendants would say so much. I think everything happens, and everything happens when humanity is ready for it or is capable of doing it. But I think the internet has been a great boon to me and to anybody who likes to do research and history. It's just been awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a good lens too. There's an inevitability to it. It was coming. It's too cool. All these like old style cocktails, but the technology is more. It's a function of speed and not like a gatekeeper, if that makes sense. Right. It was coming. Absolutely. It just helped to accelerate it.
I think the cocktail revolution has been good, and to the extent that I started some of it, I have to say it's certainly continued just beautifully without me. I mean, we've got spirits now. I mean, when I first started collecting spirits, when I first started this study, my goal was simply to be able to hold impressive parties that my friends could go to, and I say, look at this antique book here. Pick any recipe out of it. I got the ingredient for it. And so it would happen. And now I can just cruise into a bar and say, I'd like a Boulevardier, please. And a lot of them will do it. And it's been long enough that a lot of them will do it and won't believe that I was the first guy to introduce it after its long hiatus after Prohibition. Right. But which is fine. I don't wear Dr. Cocktail on my sleeves ever. I go into bar basically humble, and then if drink and recipes and spirits come up, I'll say something like, I knew that, or I designed that label, or this sort of thing, and we'll just start talking about it, and often what will happen is the bartender will be glad I was there, because my enthusiastic talk about a given drink will almost always garner several orders for that drink.
Yeah,
So
for
the
sure.
bartender will do well with that.
Especially, it's like, oh, I know because I'm the one that popularized this. Yeah. I went through your book and I gathered all the different drinks that I knew for sure, like off the top of my head, had been on a menu I worked at. And
Oh,
like
yeah?
I was impressed. I got the Aviation Corpse Survivor #2, Satan's Whiskers at Secreto,
Sure.
Lion's Tail at Mahogany. We never actually had it on the menu, but I've tested people like Psalms who are practicing on the monkey gland.
Oh,
Hanky
yeah.
Panky. It's always a good
Oh,
one.
okay,
It's like,
that's
yeah.
great. No, you're mentioning some
Yeah.
great ones.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This will be fast, I promise. Please take a moment and leave a comment on the show. It really would mean the world to me. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what we're doing well and what we could improve on. I'd love to hear from you all. All right, back at it.
It's funny because I remember memorizing when I was starting out at Secreto. That's the first time I had the Satan's Whiskers. And I remember that one in particular because no matter how busy it was on a Friday or Saturday, I always had to take the time to explain to people what curled or straight whiskers were.
Right,
And so
right.
that one stuck for sure. Yeah.
Oh no, that's a great, and it's funny that story. That is absolutely true, and I much prefer the one with Curacao as opposed to the one with Grand Marnier. It just made it too complex for me. But I mean, and that whole thing with me, that is what started it. I mean, the first drink I had that was so superb was the Corpse Reviver #2. I could taste each individual ingredient and then as a melange, the whole thing was fantastic. But the drink that really got me going in terms of wanting to spread the information was the Satan's Whiskers, and that's because you could not get orange bitters. Orange bitters was available in the United States. I did not know it at the time. In regional New York, and that was it. You had Fee Brothers doing it, and Collins who was doing it, and I had no idea. Do you know that story?
No, tell it, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. The story is I was great friends with a computer programmer who was fearless about calling anyone in the world, if he had a question about something they were doing. So I sort of took that to heart, and I thought, I can't get these orange bitters. All these recipe books call for it as though it's still available. I'm going to start calling around. And so I started calling around. Couldn't find any orange bitters anywhere. So finally, I get this book from the late 80s called The Art of the Cocktail by Philip Collins. One book would be a cocktail recipe, one would be a gorgeous photograph of the glass it was in, all served up, and they had a Satan's Whiskers in there. And the Satan's Whiskers called for orange bitters, and I was like, aha! So I call up Chronicle Books, and I ask them, I want to speak to Philip Collins. Well, Philip Collins wasn't there, of course, but they said, we'll get a message to him, and what did he use, and so on and so forth. So I hadn't heard back, so I was then I was really revved up. So I call up whatever I try to figure out where I can call Angostura, because I figured, who's going to know better where to get orange bitters than its competitor? So I eventually end up calling Trinidad, and they put me on the phone with the CEO of Angostura, Clive Cook at the time, and he said, well, normally we take Angostura and we macerate some orange peel in it, and that's what we use for orange bitters. And I was like, oh, well, gosh, that's fine, but I'm still interested in orange bitters. So he said, well, let me put you in touch with my U.S. counterpart, Jack Margette. So he did, and I got on the phone with Jack Margette, and he said, yes, there is one company that makes it in this country. It's called Fee Brothers in Rochester. And I said, thank you. So I call up Fee Brothers. And Fee Brothers, they again, lickety-split, they have me on the phone with the owner of Fee Brothers, whose name was Jack Fee. Joe Fee's father, and anyway, who ran it for a long time. And he said, yes, we make orange bitters. We've made it for years. And I said, that's great. I'd like to order some bottles of that. And he said, oh, okay. Well, we're not set up to sell people things. We distribute around New York. We can bill you 30 days net. Meaning they'd send me bottles of Angostura bitters and, orange bitters. And within 30 days, I ought to pay them.
Very liquor distributor.
It was very funny. And it's a totally different situation now. Needless to say, they make all kinds of bitters. And John Hodgman interviewed me in an article in Men's Magazine or whatever on bitters. And suddenly it's a bitters world out there now. And you can get bitters from all kinds of people. And I got involved with more stories than that. But that's how I finally found orange bitters and could make the correct Satan's whiskers, and it was then everything just sort of fell into place. So that was a very important recipe for me.
Well, you helped shepherd in a world where you don't have to call Trinidad when you want to make a cocktail.
It was fun, but the internet is much more efficient.
It is wild to think, because it's so ubiquitous now. It's almost become a meme, a joke. Like you walk into a bar and you've got the 20 bitters on the back bar, and you got the guy with the mustache, and it's like, okay, this is a serious cocktail art.
Exactly.
Like,
and I wonder if they know beyond the one cocktail they make with rhubarb bitters, what else they do with it anyway. I mean, I had Jack Fee make a bitters he hadn't made before. I said, you know what I've always been curious about? Peach bitters. As far as I know, there are only like 9 recipes in the whole pantheon of cocktails that ever called for it. But it just sounded so good. And Jack said, me too. I felt the same way. And so I took a great big leap of faith and a plunge, and I sent him a mini bottle from the 1930s that had orange bitters in it. I'd never tried it. I said, run a gas chromatograph on this thing, Jack. And so I didn't hear back, and I just went on with my life. And then one day, on my porch, there was this big box, and it contained 12 bottles of Fee Brothers peach bitters. And he said, I couldn't get anything off the gas chromatograph, but I just created some on my own. And it was like, great. So that was a beautiful thing, and now we have peach bitters.
Yeah, that's wild. Oh, man. Can you walk me through the book, how you decided to do the book, and kind of what the process of writing the book was like?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Well, similar story. I had in mind to do the book, and I was encouraged by Gary Regan again, but I had actually had it in my mind since about 1990. And by the time of the internet, certainly by 1996, I was still collecting. I was collecting ingredients and collecting all the books too. I've got a giant library. Let's do this. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, show
all
show
that. All of those books are cocktail books. Yeah. Every single one of them. Now, if you go over on this wall, they're all graphic design books. But anyway, the point being that I was tenacious about collecting those books and so on and so forth. So and the ingredients, I could take you down to the bar, and the cabinets are full of them, including ingredients that are so uncommon that the people who made them offer me money for the bottles of them.
No more exist in the world, sort of thing.
Yeah, like Krypton, which is not spelled like kryptonite. It was made by Angostura, and when they heard that I actually had a full bottle of this stuff, they were like, I want it. And that's happened in a few cases. Anyway, so I was collecting all of this stuff, and the more I collected it, the more I realized this was no longer just for parties, that I really did have a book in this. And in the late 90s, I'm in the film business normally. That was graphic designer in the film business. So I got hired onto
You got to pay your bills somehow, right?
I know. Well, it's got a better health plan.
Yes.
No question about that. But I got hired onto a John Hughes film called Baby's Day Out, and it was going to take me to Chicago, which made me very excited because Chicago had what at that point in this country were self-styled two largest liquor stores in the country. It was Binny's and Zimmerman's or something like that. I've forgotten. It was Zimmerman's and something. And so I went to both, and I was very disappointed because it had tons of stuff, but it had pretty much the stuff that I already knew about, right? It didn't have old stuff. But then one day I was cruising around in the rental car, and I whizzed by Division and Wells. I saw Chicago's oldest wine and spirits merchant as the car went by, so I went around the corner, stopped, walked in there. And it was a place called the House of Glunts. And it was an old Victorian townhouse-type building, and of 3 or 4 stories. And I went in, and which I had done in L.A. before. I would go to any liquor store I'd ever see. I'd even look them up in the phone book, and if it sounded like it was an old place, I'd go there. And to ask them if they have old stuff. And generally speaking, they wouldn't. But every once in a while, on the bottom shelf or back in the storeroom, they'd have something.
We still haven't sold this. It's been a while. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so they'd retire it, or it'd be dust-covered or whatever. They didn't think anything of it, and I'd buy it. In this store, I went in, and what I saw immediately was it was all wine. It was all wine, and I was like, okay, this is not it. So I'm heading out, and the clerk says, "Did you want something in specific?" And I said, well, "Yes, I'm looking for old spirits and liqueurs from the past, and I don't think this is it for me." So I'm heading out, and they said, "Well, wait a minute, let me get the owner in here." And I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a big thing. I don't think it's really necessary." But out comes this guy who is about my age at the time, whose family was the family of Louis Glantz, who had opened this store in 1893. And he, man, over the years, I made good friends with him, and over the years, the things I would learn, I mean, they had, at the time, getting a liquor's license also meant you sort of had a distiller's license when you were in Chicago. And the distiller's license, which David had for Louis Glantz, was number 3.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was an amazing treasure trove, that store. So back to the wine stuff. He opens up some cabinets that are closed underneath all the display cases, and he pulls out a pint bottle of it said Schwetzenwasser on it, and I'm holding it because I could tell it's old, and I look at it has a federal excise stamp strapped across the top of it. And it said distilled 1913, bottled 1933. And I was like, I don't want to drop this. I'm looking at it and going, that's amazing. Thank you for showing me. And he takes it out of my hand and goes, pop! Here, have some. And I did. And the Schwetzenwasser was a kind of a plum brandy in German. And I'm just looking at it, and I taste it, and I could still taste the fresh plums. It was amazing. It was
60 years later. Yeah.
That many years later. It still gives me goosebumps to this very day, just reminding myself of that. But yes, so it was utterly amazing. So what happens is over the time of that movie and then subsequent movies I did there, I would urge him to sell me stuff that was in the store that wasn't really on the racks. And to begin with, his response was always the same. Oh God, no. was his response to everything. But over time, he totally relaxed about that and would tell me pretty much what I wanted. He had a bottle of 1929 Dom Perignon there. It was sitting up on a rack in a way that suggested it was not kept correctly. But 1929 was one of the 3 finest vintages of champagne in the 20th century. And it had a date on it, a declared vintage on a bottle of Dom Perignon. So I think he sold it to me for $35 because I knew I couldn't open it. I knew it wasn't going to be good anymore. But I still have that bottle. It's like a genie in a bottle to me. It's the perception. It's the metaphysics of it all. And he had stuff like that. But he had old rums. He had old bitters. He had just everything. And by the time I finished on, I don't know, maybe it was Baby's Day Out. I was in a little rental apartment there, a residence inn or whatever, and suddenly my kitchen counter was just covered with bottles, right? And I had a little party there with just friends from the film, and I realized I had a book in this. I really did have a book in this. I could just photograph these and write little stories, and that would be the book. And then after I did that, I talked to Gary Regan, and he said, I'm going to put you in touch with a publisher in New York who I like, an editor I like a lot. So he put me in touch with Roy Finnemore at Crown Books. And I went to talk to him, but I wasn't really ready. I hadn't written a word of the book. I just had ideas about the book, and I showed him pictures of all the old bottles and stuff, and talked about how I would arrange the book. And he said, "That's very good. You should write this book." And I said, "But what if I want to really be in control of what the book looks like?" And he said, "Well, then you would sell it as a package. You'd design the book yourself, and you'd have the photos installed and the whole bit." And then that'll be that. Well, so I put that on one of my back burners because I always had tons, and went back home feeling really satisfied about that. And somehow I kept on collecting, but I didn't do a lot with the book. I'd maybe written a chapter or something. When, gosh, about 8 years later, John Hodgman, I had done an article on girl drinks and on bitters. John Hodgman says, I want to come out and visit you, and I want to do an interview for you for New York Times Magazine. And I was like, okay. So he came out, and we just had a great time together, and I served him all kinds of crazy stuff from vintage moonshine, real moonshine, not the stuff that they say is moonshine today with all the vanilla in it, and just all this stuff, and at the same time, I was getting married that very year. I was buying my first house that very year. And John arranged that a publishing company, would publish a book for me. He pushed me hard, and to them. And so I was doing all these 3 things at one time, and I was like very hesitant about the book. I was like, I suppose I could do it, but I've got all these other things going on. And the editors there said, it only has to be like 128 pages. Just, whatever you want to write, you go ahead and write about it. Put the photographs in it. And so about 265 pages later, I handed in to them, and that became the little slender paperback version of Vintage Spirits and Forgotten Cocktails. So the one that they wanted it in that form because they wanted it to fit into a Christmas stocking.
Oh, yes.
Yes, but then, of course, the complaints after that, the first edition was a bestseller. Oh, everybody loved it. It got all great reviews, except from bartenders who would say, you get a page wet, it glues itself to the next page for a minute, and it won't stay open because it's a thin little paperback book that closes like this.
Speaking as
So
a former
second,
active bartender, that's a real concern.
yeah, sure, absolutely. So the next edition they put out looked like a regular hardback book with a spine, but it had rings in it, like a notebook. So it looked like a regular book, but when you opened it up, it lay flat. On any given page, it laid flat. And then it went really big. And finally, the third edition in 2019, which was the 100th anniversary after Prohibition began. And each time I would add tons more recipes and more explanations of drink origins and all this stuff and more of my own philosophy. So that's how the book happened. And all of this without a real literary agent. Although John Hodgman used to be a literary agent. Now he's an actor and was a writer-actor at the time when he was doing this with me. So he gave me sort of free of charge the great power of a literary agent without having to have one. So I sailed through that whole thing. They let me keep my own text. I had a very good editor, but they really allowed me to write my own book, and that was a big thing for me because I'm an okay writer. Yeah. A lot of these bartenders who write books, they rely on their editors a lot. But I was happy that I could sort of do my own thing, and it just turned out great for me all the way around. And the book's still there, and the book still gets good reviews, and they're still making all the cocktails that I can just cruise into a bar and get. I'd like a Mamie Taylor, please.
You basically, you wanted to make sure all the drinks you liked were available everywhere. So it's like a master plan that worked out for you. Yeah.
Right. At least for me. I mean, I at the time, at that point in my process, I was definitely thinking I'd like to be able to cruise into a bar and feel like I'm in the pre-prohibition time and could just order such a drink. And in the end I could. But of course it went further. I mean, they'd find more recipes like that. And the liquor companies, I was suggesting, what you ought to bring back? Rye whiskey. Because there were like 4 brands of rye whiskey at the time I started this thing. Old Overholt, Rittenhouse, Wild Turkey made a rye, Jim Beam made a rye, and Pikesville. And those were the only ryes on the market. And but now there are tons of them. And the liqueurs, they brought back liqueurs. Now you can get Swedish punch, and you can get Pimento dram, and you can get
allspice dram.
Yeah. That were just about impossible to get unless you went to, like in Pimento's dram case, unless you went to Jamaica. They did, because what will happen is even if they make it somewhere, they may lose a distributor, and that's it for the United States.
Yeah.
Falernum's
the same way. Yeah.
I mean, I went to a liquor store just a day or two ago because the only vodka in the world that I like is real Zubrówka, which is the bison grass vodka. And they make one in the United States. It's not really the real thing because whatever they do to the bison grass flavor, it's without all the ingredients in it. Because what bison grass vodka had, and the reason you can't get the real thing in the United States, is because it contained coumarin, which is an anticoagulant. It is the generic form of the drug Coumadin, which is an anticoagulant. And so the theory is if you drank very much of the Zubrówka, get into a car wreck, bleed out. So they disallowed it. But I still loved the flavor. The flavor was great. So I went and got some of this stuff, and it was good. And I was just noticing all the shelves, all the different versions of things, all the different bitters. And I don't just mean the aromatic bitters. I mean the aperitif bitters. So you'd get, Coqui Americano and all these other wonderful things. And I was just so impressed. And I think if I take my eye off cocktails for a minute, it continues to evolve.
Happens, yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing your story about that inspiration, like that peach distillate. I'm not going to be able to say the German, but just there's something inspiring and something that's attractive about distillates and cocktail history. And I was raised by religious parents who didn't drink, and they didn't understand my attraction to this world. But there is something that kind of draws you in. It is a lot of life is kind of monochromatic, and there's not a lot of color. But I feel like cocktails and cocktail culture and lore, like that's one of the big counterexamples to that in modern age.
Yes. I mean, I think well, for one thing, my parents were similar. There was no drinking at home. There may have been like a glass of Taylor domestic port at Thanksgiving kind of thing, but otherwise there was nothing. And so it was only later that I understood. But part of it being later was part of the whole aspect of the thing denied is the thing most desired.
Yep. Look at prohibition. Yeah.
Want, and there's a sense that it's everything. So it took years to finally figure out what these things were like. But in those first moments, it was like they have infinite possibilities in my mind, and cocktails are part of human nature in that humans will try to improve on things just naturally. They'll try to find a shortcut, or they'll try to find a workaround, or they'll try to find, well, if this is good and this is good, what happens if you put them both together?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a wonderful thing about humanity, and it keeps on happening no matter what. So yeah, it's great comparing that with the Industrial Revolution, where a lot of things become possible. Refrigeration, suddenly you can get ice that's not in season. I mean, the first refrigeration was called artificial weather. And it would turn into both air conditioning and refrigeration and freezing. And so this allowed, and of course electricity would also give you electric light, which meant bars could get a lot cleaner. There was just so much that made now so much better that, of course, we, especially people who were turning 18 to 20s right now, they can assume, they have the luxury of assuming it's always been this way. Pimento dram, we've always been able to get that, or ice, any of this stuff. But the more any of them get involved and focus on it, the more it's evident that everything had a start. And then we just have to preserve so it doesn't have an ending.
The rabbit hole goes all the way down. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. No, that's definitely one of the things that I try to pay attention to. I feel like I'm a generally pretty optimistic, happy guy. I like to see the things that are good in the world and recognize them. And my wife's family's from Russia. They're immigrants. And talking to them, it really is a stark reminder that even kind of my like upbeat, try to be appreciative, like you just forget because it's the water you swim in, like how much has changed, like how good we do have it too.
Absolutely. I mean, you say from Russia, and I was going, well, did they have a still in their basement? Because a lot of the Eastern Europeans did. But then there was also that sense of cynicism that they had. Well, life's bad, but it could get worse. There's a lot of that because they just went through so much. I mean, in the climate of those countries, forget the politics, just the climate and the topography. It was harsh, and they just got used to that. To not expecting good, and so any better they got was just icing on the cake.
I will say, in relation to the still, not that they've told me, but who knows? I've only known them as older people, so they may have had a wilder youth than I know. And the immigrated part makes it sound a lot better than it was. Kicked out would be a lot more close to, yeah,
right.
and like fled for their life kind of thing.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, USSR times. So they got out. Yeah. So, and wild times, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my God, Russia's history. I mean, between the czars and the Zelensky government, and then, as you say, communism in the USSR. Yeah, there were lots of purges.
Things got wild. Yeah. When you were talking earlier, I was wondering, do you know Aaron Goldfarb? Because I feel like you would get along with him very well. I bet the guy that wrote Dusty Booze.
I don't.
Or Dusty
I
Bottles.
don't know.
Dusty Bottles. You should definitely check him out. I will put you in touch with him if you want, because his whole thing, he hunts for old bottles, and his book is all about the history of different liquor categories and like how they've evolved and the bottles he's found, and like super
that
fascinating.
sounds like how I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I've missed out on a few great things, but I found others. I mean, I found the orange bitters that David Embury in 1947 raved about as the best orange bitters ever. I finally found a full bottle of that. Fields Orange Bitters from England. And I couldn't believe it. I've got a big fifth of that stuff. I have no idea if it's any good anymore, but it was such a great feeling to see. I actually have this in my hand. I'm looking at this very thing he was describing, and yeah, I mean, what did I miss out on? I missed out on a passion fruit syrup that they probably used in early hurricanes. There's a basement full of it, but I was just involved with other stuff and I didn't get to it until it was gone. So that stuff happens too. But I've got a lot of great stuff, you know. Having nothing to do with anything, this new book that I'm working on, this French translation of an 1890s science fiction book. When I actually redesigned the book, restored the book, wrote it, translated it into English, and augmented the illustrations, I wanted to get a famous science fiction writer from the golden era to write a foreword for it. So I look up Robert Heinlein, dead. Arthur C. Clarke, dead. You know, I go through it. Isaac Asimov, dead. You know, Robert Silverberg, he's alive. Robert Silverberg's alive, and so that's he's 91, and he's a great guy. And I went and visited him, and I took him a bottle of scotch. This is the combination of situations here from the year he was born. So, which was 1935. So we just got along great, and he said, "I'll write your foreword for you," because when we first talked, he said, "I'm retired. I'm 91. I'm resting on my laurels. I will not write your foreword for you." But
the scotch opened the door.
But after I got him drunk, yeah. No, anyway, and then that's sort of where I am now. But the idea is just that, yeah.
Just anyone listening, I did not get Dr. Cocktail on the show by getting him drunk. Just for the record, to make sure that's straight. Yeah.
Just the idea of him getting me. Just the idea of getting me drunk. That was enough.
Exactly. Yes. The one thing I did want to make sure I asked you, because it was on my list. Were there any drinks in the book that you tasted and like, okay, I understand it's a pill, not for me? Like, is there anything that stood out in that way?
That weren't for me? The only drink I can think of that I still have been sort of on the shelf about was one that I altered for the book called the Modernista. It had scotch in it. And just depending on my mood, I like it or I don't like it as much anymore. These days, I find myself rather in a scotch mood, so I like it now. but it may not be a drink that people who don't like Scotch would ever like. Otherwise, I think all of the drinks were tried and true for me. I mean, there's no sense about what anybody else will like, and they're not wrong, and I'm not right. It's purely a matter of personal taste, and I realize that. And I can be, and what seems abnormal, but that I utterly love, is for someone to be able to convince me that something I don't like is good. I don't want to be a connoisseur. I want to be somebody who appreciates everything if there's a valid reason to like it. You know, if a culture really loves a particular beverage and they're not starving of or dying of thirst when they're loving it, then there's a good chance it's possible that they can make me like it. Of course, I tried this with vodka. I tried this with a Russian distiller. And I was talking with him. He was a good guy, and I was talking to him very directly. And I said, "So tell me about vodka from a Russian perspective." And he said, "We're drunks. We must have something to drink. Vodka was never anything except a way to get drunk." And I was like, "Really?" You know, and so it was. I never did quite develop a taste for vodka, other than some of the kinds of vodkas that in fact, traditionally, they would no longer call vodka. As soon as they put a little tincture of something else in there so it had a different flavor, it wouldn't be vodka anymore. It would be Zubrówka. You know, but so there's a sense that there are things that I like and things that I don't like, and I'm always willing to turn things I don't like into things I like. I am not a giant fan of tequila. I mean, there are drinks that have tequila in them that I love. They're great, but in general, it's not a flavor I like very much. I love mezcal, and tequila is a kind of mezcal. It's a kind of mezcal from tequila. And but it's just the flavor of tequila itself that I am just not a giant fan of. Whereas I do love mezcal. I consider it more like a smoky Scotch than I do like tequila.
100%. Yeah. No, I think you picked two good examples there. Scotch is a great divider. You know, people that love it. Right. And maybe they don't love it all the time, but they love it when they do want it. And the people that hate it, hate it.
Oh,
yeah. Tequila is a really good one, too, because tequila, even like the most expensive to least expensive mixed in cocktails, there is some like connecting line. Like, you know, when you're drinking tequila, it's got that distinctive agave flavor.
Yes.
That just really shines through. Yeah. Most of the world loves that, but, you know, yeah. Most of the world doesn't like mezcal, but, you know, if you have kind of trained your palate, and I forget how you put it in the book, but it's like expand your palate and have a kind of comfort when it comes to complex to bitter to like interesting flavors. Like you can kind of expand out, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's partially in the way that I tell people to taste things, because you can't just drink something down and expect to get an adequate and respectful taste of it. To me, you pour a little bit on your tongue, wash it around in your mouth, trying to get every little nuance of its flavor out, and then let it kind of drain down your throat of its own accord. And then you've got a sense of something. And that's a good way to respectfully drink things, even if you don't like them. I can do that with tequila. I can do that with Malort, or with you know, just...
maybe not as much, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I can match anybody with a foul-tasting liquor. I can match anybody. I can say, I'll go for a second.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if it's good, I mean, if it's the real thing, if it's an earnest thing, it's like Inca from China. That is a kind of a liquor that once it's distilled, they pour it into a porous terracotta pot, and they bury it in the ground. And the whole idea is they want the minerals from the ground to soak up into it. And what comes out smells and tastes kind of like iodine and dirty sweat socks and just intense.
Yeah, secondary aromas
But
in
I
the
can drink
wine
it.
world.
I
Yeah.
can taste it. It's one of the things that Hemingway used to drink to prove what a man he was, and I always have a bottle of Inca in case somebody really wants one, But yeah, I mean, I'm able to taste and appreciate things that I don't like, because they're two different things, and I'm always looking for ways to like something. So that's sort of my philosophy.
I think that's a good reminder. And my background after I was bartender, I specialized more in the wine route, kind of went the somm route. And the truth is, I don't enjoy most red wines. White was when I drink wine is what I prefer. But I've always just been a beer and cocktail guy. I got interested.
Sure.
And I think there's a progression that happens when you taste more and more, where you start paying attention and you stop tasting for personal preference and start tasting for quality. You are able to break those out in your head.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I guess it's worth mentioning that the way I learned to taste the way I do is because back when I was in Virginia, back before I'd written a cocktail anything, I went to a little bar that's still there in Charlottesville called the Virginian. And they had a blackboard up there, and sometimes they had little games, and I don't tend to play games, but this one said, here's a riddle. You get a free drink if you can answer this. What does Shazam stand for? And me being an old comic book nut, I said, this is easy. Okay, it stands for Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. And they said, you're right. So they gave me a nice little shot glass of not warmed, just warm Tanqueray. So it's the first time I ever tasted warm gin. But I held it in my mouth because it was a prize. It was a prize to me. And I could taste the peppers in it. I could taste pepper, and I could taste the pininess of the what do you call it? What goes in gin?
The juniper, yeah.
That's right, exactly. Thank you. I lost it for the pepper because I was still tasting it there, and I loved it. And I learned to taste right then and there because it was so important to me.
It was a prize.
It was a prize.
Ted, someone who's listening at home and wants to learn more about you, what you do, is there anywhere online they could go to find out more about you? Or
there used to be. I mean, there may still be. I mean, if you go to Imbibe, the magazine, imbibe.com, they have a bio for me. I don't know if it's online anymore. And I used to have a bio on my own website, but unfortunately, at some point, some web pirates stole my website. I probably hadn't renewed it quite in time. Two websites, tedhay.com, somebody else has it now, and cocktaildb.com, which was the internet cocktail database. Somebody grabbed that too when I was busy working on some movie, and I'm single-minded and single-focused in what I'm doing, so that stuff sort of happens.
Some digital squatters out there, huh?
That's right. And then they just wanted a massive sum to sell it back to me, and I said, forget it. They were. I mean, it's a shame because CocktailDB.com actually was a real public service. It was defining all kinds of ingredients. It had all kinds of magic tricks where if you put in the name of a recipe, it would give you the recipe. It would give you photographs of each ingredient in the recipe. If you click on the photograph of the ingredient, it would take you to a full biographical definition of that ingredient. and it would show you other drinks that used that ingredient. I mean, it was really wonderful thing written in Python, but I wasn't the writer, and the guy who was my partner, who was the writer, decided to move on to other things. So it kind of got stuck in stasis for a while. Then somebody grabbed it.
How it goes. Well, I guess they can go online, get vintage spirits and forgotten cocktails. Find out a little bit more from there. Yeah,
I can certainly send you a bio, and you can give it to anybody you want.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll link it in. So I publish it all, like all my episodes, or to the general channels, but also have a website, so I can attach it there too, just so people can see your whole thing. So yeah, Dr. Cocktail, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
A real pleasure.
I hope I told you what you wanted to hear. Needed.
Oh yeah, no, that and more, and I feel like I probably told you the same. So yeah, cheers. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. That is today's episode. Now, if you have not taken a moment to check out our website, please do. It's servesyouRightPod.com. We have past episodes and all sorts of other things there. If you want to get in touch with me, that's the place to do it. I do appreciate that you've given me your most valuable asset, your time and attention. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned. We have some really cool guests coming up. I would hate it if you missed it. Cheers.